Welcome to Global View. Today we have a guest who has made his name in big political circles for not only being a former president of the New York Young Republican Club and current executive secretary, but also for working behind the scene of the biggest name and movements of our time, from Steve Bannon War Room to Matt Gaetz, but also George Santos. You have brought your unapologetic, bold energy into the conservative movement, bringing like a fresh air and talking to the youth as well. Vish, welcome to Global View.
Thank you so much for having me, George and Simona. It's an honor to be here on your platform with you guys. And I love your podcast. Loved your first episode with Steve Bannon. So I'm very honored that I also received an invitation from you folks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being with us. And actually, I would like to start this interview talking about Hunter's laptop. I know this topic resonates with your work with Steve Bannon War Room because you actually amplified a lot of this message while all mainstream media were trying to censor it. I myself have worked on a film called Hunter's Biden Laptop Requiem for Ukraine that recently premiered at Trump Tower in Chicago and actually was supposed also to screen at the New York Young Republican Club, but it didn't happen yet for some reason. And I want to know your insight as someone who actually was working for Steve Bannon War Room and pushed this real news. Why even some conservative platform do you believe were trying to push back the story?
Yeah, I think it mainly started because a lot of it was about who had access to the laptop in the first place, right? And so a lot of these folks wanted to see the laptop for themselves, and I don't necessarily blame them for that, or that's a natural part of doing due process on your information. So I don't necessarily fault them for that. But at the end of the day, Steve Bannon and Rudy Giuliani aren't going to put their names on the lines for a story unless it's very true and the veracity of it has been gone thoroughly. And it didn't just end there. This was published in the New York Post at the end of the day. And in the New York Post and their lawyers and Rupert Murdoch's lawyers, none of them are going to publish anything that, the veracity hasn't been tested, hasn't been looked at. And so I think that there was just this sort of natural kind of it's too crazy to believe. There's in the Laptop from Hell story actually by Miranda Devine. She when we presented the story to Emma Morris, the New York Post deputy politics editor at the time, who would end up publishing the story. Even while I tell her that Steve's gonna call her with the evidence. He calls her. She says she wants to see it for herself. It's too crazy to believe. And so when that happened, yeah, Steve was saying you had to come out to Long Island to come see it. Had to be at a certain time, and she was getting very frustrated. And so she called me and she said, "Hey, you better not be messing around with me or lying to me or sending me on a wild goose chase because this story is almost too crazy to believe. I'm only, following it forward if you say that this is real." And I had to convince her that, hey, it's worth going. Trust me, Hunter is a crackhead. That's why he left it there. It's not because, we did some crazy thing where we stole it from him or something like that. No, this is just a serendipitous sort of unfortunate series of events for Hunter Biden that led to the laptop ending up in Rudy Giuliani and Steve Bannon's hands. You couldn't script it in a Hollywood story. They might throw you out of the room, but that's in fact what happened. And so there was always a natural sort of suspicion about it, but eventually, as more and more people got access to it, they ended up believing it. But it was really the mainstream media and the left media, whether they believed it or not, actually didn't matter. They knew it was bad news, and that's why you saw all of the sort of disinformation, misinformation, and the obfuscation and the sort of playing around with the frame and narrative of the story, and then also, trying to throw dirt on or throw doubt on what was actually found on the laptop too. The Washington Post did an article about what they thought about the investigation that we did, with the Rudy team, Bannon, myself, etc. So at the end of the day, we got the sort of validation and vindication that we were looking for the moment Joe Biden pardoned Hunter Biden for
Exactly.
yeah for 11 years, right? Any crime that he might have committed in the last 11 years, he got a pardon for. And so that is a vindication of everything that was found on the laptop, and anyone who wants to dispute that can come debate me about it.
Absolutely, they can come to us both because Miranda Devine was a speaker in this film along with Rudy Giuliani, Steve Bannon as well, and the evidence are out there, just like undeniable. And now we have the last evidence, as you said, that is the pardon that we don't, extensive pardon for every crime.
Mhm.
So, how do you think the youth is in the young? I think the conservatism has changed over the last years. So, what do you think is gonna to become moving forward in this new term with Trump finally back into power with all this fake news finally debunked? How do you think this is going to shape the future of the conservative movement, mostly among the younger people?
Well, I think now because the left has sort of been thoroughly defeated, the media machine and the
Mm,
media smear narrative and the Democrats and everything that they did. I mean, they literally took a shot at someone literally took a shot at President Trump, right? And so therefore, the fact that he was able to live through that and win through that and all the lawfare and everything only made the weight of our victory so much heavier. And therefore, the amount that they need to overcome to beat us moving forward is the price is just too high, and they're not anywhere in a position, whether resource wise, whether spirit wise, whether just even ideas wise, they're not
mhm,
able to overcome that as of yet. They haven't even started yet. But and so what I think now is going to happen with the youth is that President Trump and his alliances with Elon Musk and a lot more cultural movers and shakers, Dana White in the UFC. I think that what's going to happen is that a lot more people on our side who have the spirit, who see this time as a golden age and a moment to establish your space or establish or create something. This is the time to take a chance, to take a risk,
mm,
and I think a lot of young people are going to feel optimistic about taking risks under Trump because they have the confidence that he's going to be able to deliver economically as he did during his first term. He'll be able to deliver economically, but just not just that, but also not be so strict and sort of be sort of school marmish and finger wagging about having risky ideas, bold ideas, new ideas. The youth want to be able to express their exuberant and vibrant spirit that they have, right? Because they are so full of energy and everything, and they are going to go wherever somebody allows them to express that. And so Donald Trump, on a overall sort of not just nationally but globally, he presents that vision, that image, that spirit, right? And not just what he does, but just the way he acts, the way he carries himself, the things he says, and it pushes and pushes and pushes the space that can be then filled in by the youth to create new things for America, for our prosperity, for our future, for all these things. And so the youth are going to be very optimistic, creating new things, taking new risks. And that's a good thing for the Conservative Party, for the Republican Party, because that is the power base that our movement and our political players are going to be building off of for the next decade or two.
mm. That's a great point, Vish. Look, a quick question. You mentioned about the laptop and you mentioned about looking at the future. In my opinion, I think we have to solve and to investigate and to finally have the truth about so many of these Democrat scandals. From Obama to Biden, there's one thing that really links them, that's corruption and scandal-filled administrations. From spying on Trump's campaign to the Hunter laptop to the Ukrainian situation to record low disapproval ratings, inflation crisis. These two last presidents, not Trump, obviously, Obama and Biden, were just complete and utter disaster. So the question I have is, do you think it is wise for President Trump to go back into history and relitigate and re examine issues like Hunter's laptop the Hunter laptop, the Obama scandal, spying on his campaign, the Peter Strzok FBI scandal, all of these various issues that we still have so many questions left. Should he look at those issues? And do you think that that would help him over the next 4 years and the Republican Party as a whole?
Yeah, what I think is actually necessary is sunlight, and what I think is necessary is basically accountability, right?
So the question I have for you is, should President Trump simply look forward and focus on economic policy, foreign policy, revamping the DOJ and securing the border, or should he relitigate some of these issues from Hunter Biden's laptop to spying on his campaign and others? Do you think that will be beneficial to him politically, or it'll be a burden for him politically moving forward?
No, listen, part of moving forward is also getting accountability and shedding sunlight on a lot of these things that were done wrong or done improperly, or some of it straight up treasonous activity that took place under the auspices of our executive branch and the agencies that served in the executive branch. One thing you got to think about is that why did the Democrats go so far as to steal an election in 2020 if they weren't so concerned about what would have been uncovered if President Trump had 4 more years to continue to settle his people and his machine into the branches of government? They were so worried about the buried bodies that I think that they went and stole that election. And so now to have it back in his hands, we need to make sure that we go through these things, and that the motivation to do something so insane and so unconstitutional and so republic breaking like stealing an election, we have to make sure that the things that they did that led them to doing that weren't also something that just as insane, just as treasonous, just as republic breaking, because we want to be able to bring to light all the negative stuff that we're doing if we want to restore trust into our institutions, if we want to restore integrity into our institutions. First, you got to clear all the bad stuff out. You got to clear all the cobwebs. You got to clear all the dirt, right? If you want to make something beautiful and make something trustworthy again. And so that effort is part of moving forward. And I don't think it's a relitigation or a looking back in any sort of way.
Completely agree with you, Vish. And I think also that a lot of people who might have felt disenfranchised in the past, or certain segments of the population in the United States that might have like historical grievances with institutions like the FBI, the DOJ, I think when they saw President Trump himself becoming a target of a weaponized Department of Justice, where his house was raided, where he was indicted, he was ultimately convicted, called a felon, and almost assassinated twice, I think that really not only gave him, if you want to call it street cred, which is going to be into the next point I want to make about the new Republican Party and the new type of voters that is attracting, but I also think it gives him skin in the game to actually institutionalize these type of changes that you're talking about here. So just a quick follow-up. The new Republican Party, President Trump wants to attract new voters from every segment of American society, doesn't matter what color you are, what background you come from, what your socioeconomic status is, what your religion is. Do you think that President Trump has the ability to continue growing this party and attracting young people like groups like the New York Young Republican Club are attracting, and different demographics? Or do you just think that that was a 2016, 2020 thing? Basically, the question I have is, how can he continue with this momentum of attracting different voters the way he has done from 2016 to 2020 to 2024?
Well, George, Gavin Wax and I took over the New York Young Republican Club back in 2019. We had already, kind of got into getting the youth involved back in 2017. We as young men at the time got involved back then because we already saw where it was going in terms of what the youth will be attracted to soon enough, should the politics unfold as it has been going already, right? It was a move of foresight at the time, and it's come to fruition today, but we had to fight through all of the resistance, the media narratives, the lawfare, and the protests, and all this, the summer of 2020, all of those things. We had to fight through all those things to make sure that the momentum as it was naturally going could actually naturally flow. And part of that is that the youth are kind of done with the stifling, suffocating sort of politics of the left, and the culture of the left. And so now I think the youth are going to be energized and organized to uh, do new things in the golden age, right? Those who believe that we're at a golden age and are inspired by that are actually going to do things and create things and get engaged and involved in things that are going to build and create that new sort of political platform, that new political foundation, that's going to build our political players and our people, and the political action that we want to see for the next decade or 2 decades. So this is the time, especially with how massive and monumental Trump's victory was, not just for politics, but for the culture, not just nationally, but internationally and globally. The space that opens, the things he says, the ideas he pushes, and the new things that he's willing to try, that risk taking. Young people are going to be encouraged, inspired to take risks, to find new things and do new things, create new things, build new things. That is going to lead to more young people wanting to be on that sort of bandwagon, and wanting to do those cool and new things. That's the way to attract young people, is to, cool and new things. And the left is just totally incapable of answering that at the moment. They're in no position to do it. Actually, they're quite deflated, quite depressed, and their response to it is going to be more strictures on who's actually allowed to be involved with them or identify with them, right? And so they're kind of digging their own grave in that regard. And that's probably a good thing. I do think a healthy system requires two healthy parties, but the Democratic Party has to go through the long, hard process of reinventing itself for a new age, a new 21st century, a new golden age of America, and the politics that are going to follow with it.
Absolutely, Vishen. You raised a great point. You started this journey already in 2019, and actually, you already woke up. All this youth has been desensitized to celebrities. We have seen this new cycle with Kamala Harris that hired all the celebrities in Hollywood. You had all of them, including singers Taylor Swift, endorsing Kamala, but nobody even cared. So this work of really waking up people to what truly matters, and it's opportunities, energy, and seeing behind and through the headlines, right? It's all coming through organizations like the New York Young Republican Clubs, also movement like Turning Point USA, and people like you are just like in this age range like us that where we could be still under the umbrella of this old way to interpret politics or not to get involved into politics. So I think it's thanks to people like you that also the conservative movement has changed. So how Definitely. Do you see the Republican Party evolving after 2025 and even after President Trump presidency? How do you see the evolution of this journey that, as you said, already started and already produced its results by now?
Yeah, I think one of the key factors to look at, especially culturally, or what you might call the zeitgeist or the ethos, is that there's been a zeitgeist and an ethos where government or governing politics, culture has become quote unquote too feminized. And so what I think that there's, as this thing evolves, there's going to be a demand for something that's more unapologetically masculine. And you've already kind of seen that develop over the last couple of years, and a lot, the kind of influencers and new personalities that you see are developing around this sort of unapologetic masculine sort of brand and style and culture, right? And remember, the biggest key to victory, the big swing, or the big sort of paradigm shift that the Republican Party and specifically the Trump campaign took to win in 2024 was this focus on winning young men, right? If you remember before basically the midterms in 2022, the big play at that time was for suburban women, college educated suburban women. And that really only ended up in a 4 seat majority at that time. We didn't get the red wave that we wanted to see. But once Donald Trump and his campaign shifted its focus to trying to win young men and going on the platforms that young men today listen to, that resulted in a quite literal red wave all across the country. I think there was only maybe 1 or 2 counties that shifted from red to blue all over America during the 2024 election. Otherwise, every county in America swung red for Donald Trump. And a big part of that is the attraction of new young men who didn't really think it was cool to be politically involved before. That is now the actual sort of shift, the gear that's actually shifting, that where now it is cool as a young man to be involved in politics, because now you understand, you've matured enough to understand that politics has an interest in you, even if you don't have an interest in politics. And so now you want to be a good citizen and want to be a good stand up man for not just your family, but your country and your community. You have to be involved in politics and shepherd that thing, as it goes. And it's an everyday thing. I think young men are understanding that. And then to top that off, as young, talented men, good looking men go to that side of the political spectrum and pick their parties, the women who want those type of men will also follow them into that space. And that is how you crack the code of keeping this as a political movement that evolves and grows over time.
No, that's a recipe for success, Fish. So, I mean, following up on what you just said, so why did the Democrats invest so much in all these weird agendas and just like ostracizing like the majority of America and pushing, I guess, things that really weren't mainstream? Like, there's this growing joke that you see on X, like every time somebody like Kamala or Tim Walz or Gavin Newsom, one of these like Democrat stars, if you want to call them that, says something, people write underneath the comments, "This is why you lost." I mean, it's like because every single thing that they talk about is like alien. It has nothing to do with paying people's bills, improving their lives, their security, supporting parental rights, making masculine men, like you said, feminine women, family culture, united families. It's all the complete opposite. So why did the Democrats die on this sword of division and these weird agendas instead of taking advice like yours? Did they really think that they could just change American society so drastically, so quickly in these 4 years? Or what was their game plan? I mean, it just seemed like a recipe for disaster from the beginning.
Well, I know that a lot of people have maybe sort of different opinions now of Jordan Peterson than when, a couple of years ago when he first came on the scene, and he was really hot and accepted by especially what you might call the further right or the harder right. Now, not so much. But there was a very brilliant point that I think he made back in 2018 and 2019, in that intersectionality is actually the biggest weakness of the left and the Democrats. And what happens in their coalition, because they have this uh, as a way, because as a consequence of the feminized politics and culture that they have adopted, they have become also, as a hive, you could say, more agreeable. And because they become more agreeable, they say yes to everything, and it's hard for them to say no to some things. And so to keep their coalition together, they've ended up saying yes to a bunch of things that ended up being contradictory. And so what happens is when the rubber meets the road on that, and you see it with the Israel Gaza or Israel Palestine conflict, right? And you see it especially when a simple question as should Kamala Harris go on Joe Rogan's show, right? They they there's a big debate about whether she should try to expand the political map by trying something new, and so and trying to reach out to a demographic that a lot of people feel have marginalized. And their inability to listen to the other side, to listen from they don't want to talk to us, they don't want to listen to us, right? And so if you're going to operate in your own bubble under your own volition, you have chosen not to speak to us. You have chosen not to listen to us. And if so, that's the case, you are going to keep coming up with answers that aren't actually an answer to anything. And so that is where they are now, is that they just refuse to incorporate the perspectives of the other sides and people who disagree with them into their worldview, right? And a simple way to understand that is like, why is it that right wingers um, understand the way liberals think, but liberals don't understand the way we think, right?
Hmm.
And it's because we pay attention to them, but they don't pay attention to us. And
Yeah.
so that is exactly what's happening. They refuse to take us seriously as people who have legitimate concerns or are conveying legitimate concerns on behalf of a population or demographic that deserves to be taken seriously. And their concerns deserve to be taken seriously and legitimately. And so because of that refusal, that's why you're seeing this play out in real time.
Absolutely, and I believe there is they mastered this brainwashing machine, so that everything that comes from a conservative voice is already labeled as something derogatory, like okay, you're a fascist, you're a white supremacist, you're all these kind of things. And also they overplay these identity policies. I'm an immigrant myself, and what I enjoy about America is like the opportunity to grow and not to be put in a box, like you come from here, you will have this benefit or whatever. So but it's a real, what I experienced here is a real cultural war. Now you are also a media expert. How do you think media played a role in this cultural war?
Well, because media has now gone through a defragmentation, or a as what Steve Bannon might call disintermediation, right?
Mhm.
In that there's no more sort of relying on the CBSs of the world or the Washington Post or the New York Times of the world to get your information from the people that you want to get it from. Instead, now those people that you want to get that information from can provide it to you directly through a new sort of system like X, like Instagram, like YouTube, like TikTok, right? Like podcasts, like internet shows, shows like your own. Because we're able to go and seek that content in a defragmented way. And another thing adding to that is that because nobody relies on or nobody trusts institutions anymore, you don't necessarily oh, this guy works at CBS, so I trust him and whatever he says. That's not the way it works anymore. Right now, it's just I only trust that guy because he's got it right. He got it right for the duration of time that I've been listening to him or paying attention to him. And so you've now gone from institution to individual people and those individual platforms. And so now with that being in play, the defragmentation brings pieces of audiences together that may not be listening to CBS or any of these other, classical institutional legacy corporate media. And those people who, because they don't trust or listen to those big institutions and only listen to these small things, those people who, and those candidates and those political players who actively go to talk to those audiences, those small audiences, those fragmented audiences, and take their time to go and talk to those are the people who are going to win. Those are the people who are going to, kind of put together the votes and the coalitions from places where they've never gotten it before in order to win and kind of come over the top, based on what the math ends up being. But this decentralization of media has really forced Democrats to have to go and talk to people that they never wanted to talk to before. And they don't want to do it because if they actually go and have to answer to the people who have been asking them questions and they haven't been answering those questions for a long time, they might end up looking dumb. They might end up getting exposed. They might end up having to have a real conversation, a real debate about ideas and futures and what is true and what is right. And because of our sort of real-time viral machine system that exists today, as soon as you make that mistake or you get owned or you get trapped, it's everywhere and everybody knows it. And this is the thing that scares the Democrats and the left to death. And that is why they refuse so far to do anything like that, or to engage any platforms like that, or engage any people like that. And so the media is critically important, but because the media is now so integrated into the social media system in a defragmented way, the moment you say something or do something that is either good or bad, the entire world is going to know about it, right? And so the risk factor is high, but the people who engage in with that risk factor can receive a possible, a high reward for engaging, or a really detrimental award for engaging and failing in a big way. And again, the right, the Republicans, the conservatives, we are now the risk takers. We are the ones that are trying to do something new, and the Democrats almost spiritually are unable to do it.
Yes.
You know.
No, I think that's a really interesting point because people like Kamala Harris or even Joe Biden and other, big Democrat stakeholders, they would rather talk to Fox News and somebody like Joe Rogan. And that's really fascinating because back in the day, they would be so fearful of something like Fox News or one of these other conservative channels, but they almost seem comfortable because so many of these channels are just beholden to various interest groups or stakeholders, and they almost have the same narrative. And when you go into this decentralized media like you're describing, you're getting real news, real facts from the real stakeholders who are the experts of what you want to hear from. So I think that's definitely a game changer. So my question based on what you just said is, when do you think that the mainstream media lost its credibility? Like, what was the impetus and why did they decide that they wanted to spread disinformation, misinformation, and lose its credibility when their entire bottom line, their ratings, their viewership depends on facts and real news? So when did the media just decide to go on this suicide mission, spread these fake stories, and lose credibility? Why did they end up? Why did they want to do that, or what led to that?
Well, I think that what's actually, we know that they're controlled by these interests and all
Yeah.
that, and so I think that that's been true for a long time, especially ever since sort of the monetization of the news media itself, when they started running commercials on news media and cable news was involved, and it's 24-hour news cycle is developed. I think that this sort of system kind of incentivized these big interests having the stories that they wanted to push, and also at that time they were looking for stories to push, so they'll take just whatever a press release just as is, or a media package or a producer package as is from other PR people and communications directors for all these different organizations and corporations, etc. What I think then happened is that because there was no central sort of repository to communicate and pay attention to these things at that time, there was no way to not just track it, but share that information in real time to everybody. So I think that these people have been doing fake news for a long time, right? And Dan Rather with the George Bush story back in the day, right? And there have been these examples, but now with the introduction of the internet integrated with social media, whenever they mess up, now you can show that they've messed up or lied or spread fake news, and you could take that news and spread it in real time to the whole world faster. And so they've never had to deal with that environment before. And so now they don't know how to deal with it outside of censoring people and shutting down, stories, or not talking about stories, or ignoring. This is where it became, and then Donald Trump kind of set that into overdrive, right? And because he came and he was a big threat, and it's not just that he's a threat in the terms of they don't like him or anything like that. It's actually about what he represents on a metaphysical level for the future of this country and the republic. And some of the really smart people knew and understood that. That's why they deployed this massive machine that they've had that has been spreading fake news, but they're in an environment where they can get caught more easily. spreading fake news, but they did it anyway, right? Because they needed to stop Donald Trump, and they threw everything at him, and because of his bravery, really, and his power and his charisma and his aura and his ability to his singular ability to break through all of that and still make it to the finish line, that ends up exposing all of these people and exposing their overreach as well. And we all saw that in real time, right? And that's when sort of the credibility of the media just kind of went through the floor as a result. It's Donald Trump and being there and their reaction to it, and him still beating their overreaching reaction exposed all of them. And we all saw it. We all watched it, right? And it happened over years and years and years and years. And so that's kind of why we're at where we're at today. But they've been always doing it, but it's Donald Trump whose singular ability to withstand their machine, that's when it exposed it all. That's when it happened.
Totally.
Totally agree.
It definitely changed the scenario also of the White House press room, right? Now we have influencers and independent network welcome to make briefing reports about what's going on. And I think this comes exactly from this point. People don't trust the mainstream media. And also, let's think about the other type of demographic, the older people. The ones who watch Fox News and the ones who watch CNN, they have two different incompatible visions of what's going on in America. But now we have somebody like Elon Musk who's telling everybody, you are the news. You don't need the filter of the platform to actually report what you see, report facts, and you can call out misinformation, fake news in a tweet, in a post. So you can just so you have access to all these tools. So do you think there is still a future, all considered, for news anchors like Fox News or even like on the conservative side? I'm not talking about simply CNN. Do you think they're still be competitive on this market, or you think it's gonna fade away in a few years from now?
I think that they're going to still exist, but they're not going to exist in their current form, and they're certainly not going to exist on their current paychecks, right? The problem is that all of a sudden, when you take a Joe Rogan and you put his audience and the power of anybody going on his show and its ability to spread, and you compare that with Anderson Cooper, right? He was a multi-million-dollar contract and all this support staff and these massive systems, these massive studios, these massive broadcast systems and all that. If you take all that into account, it is a multi-million, 10, 20, 30, 40, $50 million effort for one guy, right? And all of a sudden that's a highly inefficient system in this market, right? And so if instead the challenge was, well, Anderson, your pay is going to be and compensation is going to be commensurate with the audience that you have and the audience you're able to attract, because nobody cares that you're Anderson Cooper just to be Anderson Cooper. You actually got to be delivering content that people want, ideas that people like, right? And you have to court your audience. You can't just talk at your audience and tell them what they should believe. When that no more $20 million contract, no more 10, right? It's all going to depend on the eyeballs you bring and then the advertiser dollars that you bring in with that, and you'll get a cut of that. That's fine. But, unless you build your audience to 10 million a broadcast again, you're not going to be making the same money you were making before. And that's when these guys will all be out. Right. That's when they're going to be like, no, I've been living, off the hog, $20 million a year paycheck for talking on TV for a couple hours. Right. They're not going to like that deal. Right. And so, unless CNN and MSNBC and these big stations say, hey, none of this, it's actually going to be based on your performance and based on whether people like you or not, or your ideas or your content, and that's going to determine how you guys are going to get paid. Unless that's the approach, they will not have a future. Now the media, they need to do a Doge on the media now, right? And find all the inefficiencies based on their actual numbers and eyeballs and impact. And when they do that, all these people will be gone.
You're currently working with OAN. You've advised some rising stars in the GOP. You've worked with people like Steve Bannon and others. You know the game. You know what to look for in future leaders. What's your advice to a young man or woman today who wants to get into politics, wants to make a difference, of how to mold somebody like that? Do you give them advice to do a podcast, to run for Congress, to what kind of work should they get into? What type of messaging should young people be looking to articulate to get some traction in today's MAGA? Because I'm all about the future.
Mm-hmm.
The present is extremely great. This is President Trump's last term. We both love MAGA. We've both been ardent supporters of MAGA from the beginning, and we want to keep this thing going for the next 20, 30 years. So how are we, or how would you advise somebody to become the new face of MAGA? What does that person, man or woman, need to do to be a leader in today's Republican Party?
Yeah. So I've worked with a bunch of these different guys, and all these people have different traits that make them special, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the thing that they all have is a knowledge of self, right? The first thing that you need to have is to understand who you are and what your superpowers are, and what you can do and what you want to do, right? And the can do and want to do things you have to match up, right? That's the gap that needs to be closed. And so a lot of people actually they come in and there's something that they want to do, right? And then I ask them, okay, you want to do this, but can you do this? Can you do these minimal things that are necessary to do the thing that you want to do? And a lot of times people don't these young folks don't even know that that's what's needed to get to that space, right? And so one of the things that young people need to understand right away is, hey, what are you good at? Now, some of the traits or skills that are highly desired in this space where you can possibly be brought into a congressional office on an internship, or even a low-level staff job just to start, or a media organization or a personality. They want you to kind of start as a producer or something like that. You know, the number one talent that all these people look for is writing. Writing
Mm.
is the first big thing. If you can write, you're already kind of at the top of the list, right? And so if you're able to write, you're able to write long form, you're able to write short form, you're able to write press releases, you're able to write content, you're able to write articles, any that do research and write it and present it in a way that's digestible. Those are all big, highly desired traits. Probably the number one trait in politics or skill in politics that's that's sought after. So if you're a writer, start working on writing and getting your writing out. Right, that's the other thing. Right, if you haven't had your opportunity yet, start that Substack. Right, start getting your thoughts and your ideas out there and write them up, because there's so many channels. The pipelines of distribution of content have been so democratized that you kind of don't have an excuse for why you're not getting your things out there and getting feedback live from a real audience, right? Whether that's 10 people, whether that's 100 or 1,000 people, you put it out to them, they actually read it, and some of them are willing to give you feedback. And if they like it enough, they'll share, etc., and it goes bigger and it gets through that. But producing your actual content and putting it out there and writing and practicing and getting better, that is the first thing. Then there's other skills like technical skills. Today, a lot of these members of Congress, politicians, sort of campaigning people, even campaign operatives, political operatives, they really don't know how social media even works to this day on a granular level, or how to write the content to be catching of the eye, or how to distribute the content in a way where it makes an impact, or um, how to even style the content in a way that catches the eye and catches the viewer and holds it. Those sort of skills are also highly sought after today. People are still there's maybe 20, 30 competent social media managers just working in Congress under congressmen, right? And we have 218 congressmen at least, right? And so there's only 20 or 30 competent ones that work for them, and you see all their stuff on their boss's stuff on social media. You get what I'm saying? So there's already a lack of that. And then editing and video, if you can edit videos or edit video content or shoot content with cameras, that is also highly sought after today, right? And there's just not enough talent to go around in that space to get into that. And once you do that, listen, to go from behind the camera to in front of the camera is not a hard transition. In fact, somebody might give you the opportunity if they like you enough. They see you behind the camera, and you're in the room advising them, say this and do this. They're like, hey, you're good at that. Why don't I put you in front of the camera and you say that? And now you have your opportunity in front of the camera. Now you have your opportunity to be a face, right? And so the hardest part is getting in the room. What are the skills that can get you in the room? Right. And once people see your hard skills and they see that you can produce on your hard skills, then they start letting you advise them and you can start exhibiting your soft skills. And once you've done that and exhibited your soft skills and that people like you or you have this charisma or you're funny or whatever, when they see that, that's when they decide they can't let you go, and they'll actually allow you to grow and give you new opportunities and bigger opportunities, et cetera. And that's how you become, a face or a mover or a personality or an influencer or a high level staffer or a politician, a candidate, a elected member himself.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful insights. I couldn't agree more with you. And on this note, I would like to ask, just share with people where they can find you, where they can find your work. If you have any upcoming events with the New York Republican Club you want to invite people to, just tell us where to find you and your work.
Yeah, my biggest social media following is on X. Follow me at Vish Burra, VISHBURRA. You can see my work every day on the Matt Gaetz Show on OAN that airs at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Also, download the OAN Live app. That's where you can get the content to you right in your phone, right in your hands, and video on demand and all that. And so make sure to download that in your app store. The NYYRC, go to nyyRC.com. We're on X at NYYRC. You can follow our events, our content, and we do have still the best events in New York City for any young conservative who wants to come be a part of a movement or a club that's over 1,700 members now, and to know that you're not alone, and there are plenty of people who are not just out and about, but proud about not just being conservatives, but doing the things that is going to deliver this country and save this country and allow this country for a conservative, bright future that's going to lead to our golden age as promised by President Trump.
Thank you very much, and thanks for joining Global View.
Thanks so much, Vish. It was a really incredible, wide-ranging interview. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys for having me. It's an honor.
We hope to have you back. Thank you.